The maid stumbled through sheets of rain at 11:33 on that humid August night. 27 years old, but the welts across her shoulders made her move like someone twice her age. Cassandra Morgan's black and white uniform clung to her frame, soaked through, blood seeping through the fabric where Preston Mercer's belt found her that morning. 8 hours of pain crystallized into red streaks running down her spine. Her hair plastered to her pale face, she clutched a child's drawing inside her coat pocket. Noah's stick figures in crayon, Mommy, Noah, and a house with yellow windows that didn't exist anymore. Next to the drawing sat 2 crumpled dollar bills. $2. That was everything. Thunder rumbled somewhere beyond the hills. The air hung so thick it coated her lungs, making each breath a struggle. Cars passed without slowing. Highway 101 at midnight was not a place where anyone stopped to help. It was a place where people disappeared. Then headlights. 3 black SUVs slowed alongside her, moving in perfect formation like a hunting pack. The vehicles were so dark they seemed to absorb the rain itself. Cassandra's legs seized. Her instinct screamed to run, but her body had already given its answer. She could barely stand. The first SUV pulled ahead and stopped. Doors opened with synchronized precision. Men emerged from the rain, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing suits that cost more than everything Cassandra had owned in her entire life. Their movements carried the weight of people who never had to ask twice for anything. One man stepped forward from the center. Lucian Caruso. He was 34 years old, though something in his eyes suggested he had lived several lifetimes already. Dark hair, water-slicked and perfect. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored so precisely that each seam seemed cut by intention rather than accident. But it was his eyes that arrested her. Storm gray, penetrating, missing nothing. A scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, a thin line like someone had drawn it with a blade wrapped in ice. Carlo stood to his left, broad-jawed and expressionless. Franco to his right, fingers loose at his sides in a way that suggested easy violence. The dangerous men went absolutely still when they saw the blood trailing down Cassandra's uniform. Lucian stepped forward into the rain. Water beaded on his cashmere coat, worth more than a year of her old rent. He moved like a general surveying a battlefield, each step deliberate and controlled. When he stopped in front of her, the distance between them felt charged with electricity. "Get in the vehicle," he said. His voice fell like thunder through the storm. Solid. Final. Cassandra's legs trembled. Not from cold. From recognition. This man belonged to a world that destroyed people like her. She had learned to read the signs, the quality of the suit, the precision of the men surrounding him, the absolute certainty in how he spoke. Power that could not be questioned. Franco moved one step to the right. Cassandra flinched. The movement was barely visible, a contraction of her shoulders, a sharp intake of breath. But Lucian saw it. His eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second, like a predator identifying wounded prey. "You are bleeding on a highway at midnight," Lucian said, his gaze never leaving her face. "Whatever you are running from, it will find you out here. The rain will not save you. These cars will." She looked at him. Really looked. There was something in his expression that was not cruelty. Not exactly. It was something else. Recognition, perhaps. The kind of recognition that comes from having failed to save someone before and knowing what that failure looks like in another person's eyes. "I do not have money to pay you," Cassandra whispered. Her voice trembled like a candle in the wind. "I have $2. That is all." Lucian did not respond to that. Instead, he reached out and opened the rear door of the center SUV. The interior was warm, leather seats glowing softly in the dark. He extended his hand toward her, palm up. An invitation. Carlo's jaw tightened. Franco shifted his weight. In 15 years of working for this man, they had never seen him offer shelter to a stranger pulled from the rain. They had seen him offer bullets. They had seen him offer nothing. They had not seen this. Cassandra moved toward the vehicle. Every step brought fresh pain screaming through her shoulders. She climbed into the back seat, and Lucian closed the door behind her with a soft click. Through the window, she watched him return to the lead SUV. He did not look back at her. He simply gave an order, quiet and unmistakable, and the convoy began to move. The engine hummed beneath her, a mechanical purring that seemed to belong to something alive. Rain drummed against the roof in a rhythm like 1,000 fingers tapping in the darkness. Cassandra held Noah's drawing tightly, and the $2 bills fell from her coat and scattered across the leather floor. She did not pick them up. What she did not know was that the man driving the SUV behind theirs was already placing a call to someone in San Francisco. What she did not know was that Lucian Caruso had made a calculation the moment he saw her flinch, and that calculation involved cameras and protection and the strange gravity that pulls toward those who have already been broken by the same machinery that was now hunting her. But first, the story needed to rewind. It needed to go back 3 days, to the morning when Cassandra Morgan still believed she could survive this alone. 3 days earlier, Cassandra sat on the edge of a twin bed in a room that wasn't really a room. It was a closet that Preston Mercer had converted into a rental unit, charging $500 a month for the privilege of existing in a 6-by-10-foot space with a hot plate and a sink that barely ran cold water. The walls were thin enough that she could hear her neighbor's television through the plaster, could hear footsteps in the hallway, could hear Preston's voice when he came to collect. The clock on her phone read 5:19 in the morning. She had 32 minutes to shower, change into her maid's uniform, and catch the bus to the Langford estate on Pacific Heights, where she had been cleaning Sophie Langford's mansion 3 days a week for 2 years. The pay was $18 an hour under the table. No taxes, no benefits, no recourse if something went wrong. Cassandra's hands were calloused from years of scrubbing other people's floors. Her knees ached from kneeling on tile. But it was her shoulders that hurt this morning in a way that made even breathing feel like betrayal. She opened her wallet with trembling fingers. 3 ones. 2 quarters. 1 dime. For pennies. $8.64. That was everything until Friday, when she would receive her payment from Sophie Langford. 42 hours of work for $556. Out of which she owed $400 to Preston this month. $100 to the utility company. $50 to the bus pass. That left $6.56 to feed herself and Noah for the next 2 weeks. Mathematics had become her prison. The numbers never changed. They only got worse. A knock at her door made her flinch. Sharp. Demanding. She knew exactly who it was before she opened it. Preston Mercer filled the doorway like a sickness. 58 years old, with a gut that hung over a belt so worn it had begun to crack. His eyes were the color of old dishwater, and they held no kindness anywhere in their depths. He wore the same stained shirt he had worn yesterday, or perhaps the day before. His teeth were the color of old ivory. "Rent is due," he said. His voice came out like something dragged across gravel. "You are $200 short from last month." "I know," Cassandra said. She had learned not to make excuses. Excuses made him angry. Silence sometimes worked. "I will have it on the 28th. The 28th. Preston stepped inside the room. The space suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had decided to collapse inward. "That is 9 days away. I have overhead, Cassandra. Utilities. Property taxes. I cannot run this building on IOUs." The knot in her chest tightened. She had heard this speech before. It came in different versions, but the message was always the same. She owed more than she could ever pay. She was behind. She would always be behind. "I understand," she whispered. "Do you?" Preston moved closer. His breathing smelled like stale coffee and something rotten underneath. "Because it does not seem like you understand. It seems like you think you can live here for free, eating the air, taking up space that could be rented to someone who actually has money." Cassandra said nothing. She had learned that lesson too. Preston's hand came up. The back of it connected with her cheekbone, quick and casual, like swatting a fly. The pain arrived a second later, sharp and electric. She did not cry out. Tears burned in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. $1,900, Preston said, his voice dropping to something almost conversational. By Friday, or you and that kid of yours are out. I have already rented this unit to someone else. Family with money. They can start moving in Saturday. He left. The door closed behind him. Cassandra sat on the edge of the bed and did not move for several minutes. The pain in her cheek bloomed into a bruise that would show if she did not cover it with makeup. She had become very good at makeup. $22,000. That was the number that had arrived 3 weeks ago in a cream-colored envelope from a law firm she had never heard of. The apartment building where Noah's father's mother lived was being seized in a foreclosure. The costs would be divided among the family. Cassandra, as Noah's mother, was responsible for her portion. $22,000 in 12 days, or the debt would become a lien on her wages for the next 20 years. She did not have $22,000. She did not have $2,000. She did not have $200. The bus would arrive in 14 minutes. She showered, changed into her uniform, and did not look in the mirror. The rain had not started yet. The sky was grey, threatening, but holding back its violence like a fist not yet thrown. Cassandra stood at the bus stop on Geary Boulevard and tried not to think about the mathematics. It was becoming harder. The numbers had started to whisper to her in the dark. The rain had not started yet, but it was coming. Cassandra Morgan could feel it in the way the air pressed against her skin, heavy and waiting, like the moment before a fist closes. She stood at the bus stop on Geary Boulevard, her maid's uniform already damp from the fog that rolled in off the bay, and she tried very hard not to think about the mathematics. It was becoming harder. The numbers had started to whisper to her in the dark. $22,000. 12 days. $2 in her pocket. The bus arrived at 5:43 a.m., 3 minutes late, and Cassandra climbed aboard without lifting her eyes from the floor. The other passengers were invisible to her, and she was invisible to them. This was the way of the city. The wealthy did not see the people who cleaned their homes. The powerful did not see the people who served them. After 8 months of working at Lucian Caruso's mansion on Nob Hill, she had become very good at invisibility. She transferred twice. Her hands, even in summer, never warmed. The Caruso mansion rose from the hilltop like a dark prayer, all stone and shadow and windows that reflected nothing back. 3 stories of old money and older secrets. Cassandra descended the marble steps at the service entrance, her black and white uniform crisp despite the fog, her collar high enough to cover most of the bruising on her neck. High enough, but not quite all. She had learned to angle her face away from mirrors. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, stood in the kitchen with a clipboard and the expression of someone perpetually disappointed by the quality of help available in San Francisco. "Third floor study," she said without looking up. "Master suite bathroom. And the East Wing library needs the marble polished. No talking to the family. No talking to the guests. No talking, period." Cassandra nodded. She had heard this speech 74 times. She had counted. The 3rd floor was quiet at this hour. The mansion would not wake for another 3 hours. She moved through hallways lined with oil paintings of stern men in gilded frames, their eyes tracking her as if they, too, understood that she did not belong here. Dust particles floated through the morning light like tiny ghosts. She had always thought that dust was the dead skin of a house, that it told the story of everyone who had lived there, and that when she swept it away, she was erasing history. In the master suite bathroom, she found the shower stall still wet, a towel thrown across the marble counter, expensive soap melting in a dish. Someone had lived here last night. The luxury of this place still struck her sometimes, the way it could waste without thinking. A bottle of cologne cost more than Noah's entire wardrobe. The hand towels were Egyptian cotton. She folded them with precise corners and tried not to imagine what it would feel like to use something just once and throw it away. The East Wing library was her favorite room, though she would never have admitted this to anyone. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, a fireplace of dark stone, leather chairs positioned near windows that overlooked the city. Cassandra scrubbed the marble staircase that curved through the center of the room, her movements practiced and silent. She had memorized the pattern, left to right, top to bottom, 3 passes with the cloth, then the buff to bring up the shine. At 8:17 a.m., Carlo descended the staircase. She did not look up. He was a big man, Carlo, broad-shouldered, olive-skinned, with a kind of face that suggested he had learned a long time ago that mercy was a luxury. He wore a suit that probably cost more than everything Cassandra owned combined. He did not acknowledge her existence as he passed. She was furniture. Expensive furniture, perhaps, but furniture nonetheless. By noon, she had cleaned 8 rooms, scrubbed 16 bathrooms, and vacuumed 30,000 square feet of floor space. She had not eaten since yesterday. The staff break room had coffee and nothing else. The cook did not prepare meals for the cleaning crew. She drank 2 cups and tried to ignore the way her stomach had started to fold in on itself. At 1:44 p.m., Franco walked past her as she emptied trash in the garden. He was smoking something expensive, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. She understood maybe 1 word in 10. The words she understood were money and problem and hospital. She kept her head down. The underground level. She descended the concrete stairs at 2:45 p.m., and the temperature dropped with each step. The air grew cooler, staler, like the breath of something that did not see sunlight. Mrs. Chen's voice echoed in her memory, underground level. Daily. In and out. You see nothing. You say nothing. Cassandra had learned not to ask why. The steel door at the bottom of the stairs was always unlocked during the day. Beyond it lay the poker room. Green felt tables arranged in a semicircle. Overhead lights dimmed to amber. The walls were soundproofed, she could never hear anything from the street, no matter how loudly the city shouted above. Stacks of cash sat in clear plastic cases on a side table. Whiskey glasses, some full, most empty. The smell of cigar smoke so thick it seemed to have weight. She had never seen anyone down here during daylight hours. The room belonged to the night. Cassandra moved through it with a cloth and a trash bag, collecting abandoned glasses, straightening chairs, running her fingers over the felt to smooth it. The work took 30 minutes. She performed it the same way every day, mechanically, invisibly, like a ghost completing rituals she did not understand. What she did not know was that someone had been watching her for 3 weeks. Lucian Caruso sat in his study on the 2nd floor, the door closed, the room lit only by the grey afternoon light filtering through heavy curtains. He was reviewing ledgers, numbers that represented shipments, favors, debts that would be repaid in cash or blood or occasionally, mercy. He was 47 years old and had not felt mercy in a very long time. His lieutenant Carlo entered without knocking, as was his privilege. The new product cleared customs, Carlo said. No complications. The suppliers? Nervous. Asking for insurance money. They heard about the Port Authority investigation. Lucian set down his pen. Give them something to be nervous about. Tell them we will handle the investigation. Give them a number. Make it high enough that they understand we are serious and low enough that they can pay without selling family property. Carlo nodded and turned to leave. Wait, Lucian said. The maid. Cassandra. How long has she been with us? Carlo's expression did not change, but something shifted in the room. 8 months. Why? Nothing. I noticed she seems thin. She is poor. Poor people are thin. Lucian said nothing. Carlo waited a moment, then left, closing the door behind him. Alone, Lucian opened a drawer in his desk. Inside lay a single photograph, aged and worn at the edges, the colors faded like an old bruise. The photograph showed 2 young men smiling at the camera. The older one's arm was around the younger one's shoulders. Both of them looked like they believed the world was still a place where love mattered. Lucian was the older one. His brother, the one whose name he no longer spoke, had been the younger one. That was 15 years ago. 15 years since the betrayal. 15 years since Lucian made the choice between mercy and survival, and his brother had stopped breathing 3 hours after that choice was made. He closed the drawer. He did not look at the photograph often. When he did, he could not sleep for days. At 4:15 p.m., Cassandra left the mansion and caught the bus back toward the neighborhood where she and Noah lived. The rain had not started yet, but the sky had darkened, promising violence. Her uniform clung to her like a second skin, damp from the fog and from the sweat of moving quickly, always quickly, because time was a currency she could not afford to waste. The studio apartment was on the 5th floor of a building that had not been painted since 1987. 200 square feet. A single mattress. A table. Milk crates for storage. The only beautiful thing in the entire space was Noah's drawing, taped to the wall above the bed with the same care someone might display a masterpiece in a gallery. Noah had drawn it when he was 4. 3 figures holding hands, a woman, yellow hair, pink dress, a man, blue shirt, big smile, and a small figure between them, red shirt, smaller smile. Above them, a sun in the corner, yellow with orange rays. Underneath, in large, uncertain letters, Noah had written, "My family." Cassandra did not have the heart to tell him that the man in the blue shirt had left when Noah was 6 months old, and that family was now just 2, her and a child who was learning, too young, that love was not always reliable. She was making Noah dinner, boxed mac and cheese, the cheapest brand, which she could stretch to 2 meals if she was careful, when the knock came. Preston Mercer filled the doorway like a stain. He was a man of 52 with the face of someone who had never been told no by anyone who could not afford a lawyer. He wore an expensive watch that caught the light when he moved, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost anything he wanted to keep. Noah looked up from his bowl. "Mommy. Go to your room, baby." Noah hesitated. Even at 7, he understood that this man brought no good energy. But he obeyed, taking his bowl with him, closing the thin door that did not actually close, just left a gap. Preston stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind him. "Cassandra," he said, and his voice carried the tone of a man discussing something casual, like the weather or a television show. "We need to talk about your financial situation." He pulled a document from his inside jacket pocket and tossed it on the table. It landed near her dinner plate, the paper curling slightly from moisture in the air. Notice of foreclosure and back fees. Her hands had started to shake. $22,000, Preston said, and he smiled, that smile that made her skin crawl, that smile that told her he had already calculated exactly how much power he had over her. "You have 12 days to settle the debt, or you and your son are out. I have already rented this unit to someone else. A family with actual money. They start moving in Saturday." She tried to explain. The foreclosure was on property she did not own, on a debt she had not incurred, on a building 300 miles away that belonged to Noah's paternal grandmother, not to her. She had received the letter only 3 weeks ago. A law firm with a name she could not pronounce claimed she was liable for her portion of the building's back taxes. Preston listened with the expression of someone who had heard desperate women explain their circumstances 1,000 times and had stopped listening around year 2. 12 days, he said again. And then he added something else, something that made the air in the room feel like it had turned to poison. "There are other ways to settle debts. Ways that do not require money." His eyes traveled down her body. The sound that escaped from her throat was not quite a word and not quite a cry. It was something older than language. Preston smiled again, the smile of a man who had just confirmed something he already knew. Then he turned and walked out, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like a door closing on a coffin. Cassandra sat at the table, the mac and cheese cooling in front of her, the foreclosure notice staring up at her like an accusation. From the other room, she could hear Noah moving around, trying to be quiet, the way he always tried to be quiet when she needed him to be. She pulled out her purse and counted the money inside. $2. In bills, it was a 5 and 3 ones. In coins, 47 cents. $2.47 to last until her next paycheck, which was Friday, which was 4 days away, and which would barely cover the rent that Preston was holding over her head like a guillotine. The rain started. It came down in sheets, the kind of rain that sounded like applause at a funeral. Outside her window, the city blurred. Somewhere out there, people were sleeping in apartments with heat. People were eating dinners that were not rationed by days remaining in a paycheck. People were not doing the mathematics of survival. Cassandra pulled Noah out of his room and held him, and together they watched the rain, and she did not tell him that in 4 days, the world might end. The rain hammered the windshield like 1,000 angry fists. Inside the black SUV, Cassandra Morgan sat rigid between Carlo and Franco, both men staring straight ahead, their silence a weight she could feel pressing down on her chest. The leather seat beneath her was soaked with blood, hers seeping through the fabric of her maid's uniform in dark stains that looked almost black in the dim interior light. She clutched Noah's drawing inside her coat pocket, the paper soft and worn from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times. Her other hand trembled in her lap. $2. That was all the money left in her purse. $2.47 to her name. From the driver's seat, Lucian Caruso's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair silvered at the temples, his expensive suit still immaculate despite the late hour. A scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, white and thin like a knife's mark. When he spoke, his voice was deep and solid like an oath. "You work at my estate." It was not a question. Cassandra nodded, her voice barely audible. "I clean the East Wing. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Every Tuesday and Thursday for 8 months. Never late. Never miss a shift." He did not take his eyes off the road. "I notice things other people miss." Franco shifted uncomfortably beside her, his eyes dropping to the blood on the seat. The SUV wound through San Francisco's hills, rain slicking the streets, the city lights blurring into impressionist smears of color. They passed through iron gates into an estate that took her breath away. Not the mansion where she worked, this was different. Private. Secure. Guards stood at checkpoints, armed and watchful, their eyes tracking the vehicle as it pulled into a marble portico. Inside, the foyer rose 3 stories high. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across polished stone. The air smelled of expensive wood and leather and something else, money, perhaps, the way wealth had its own particular scent. A woman appeared in the doorway, moving carefully, one hand trailing along the wall. Elena Caruso. 29 years old, dark hair, dark sunglasses even at midnight. She moved like someone navigating a landscape only she could feel. Blind. 8 years since the car accident that killed their parents. Elena's voice was gentle, almost musical. "Lucian, who is this?" "Someone who needs a room tonight." Elena nodded without question, extending a hand in Cassandra's general direction. "You are safe here." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they terrified her. Safety was not something Cassandra had learned to recognize. Safety was a luxury item, like the suits that cost more than everything she owned, like the heating system that ran quietly through these halls, like the food that would never need to be rationed by days remaining in a paycheck. Lucian led her upstairs to a guest suite. Clean sheets. Soft carpet. A private bathroom with towels that felt like clouds. He stood in the doorway, his scarred face unreadable. "There is a first aid kit in the bathroom. Someone will bring you clothes." The door locks from the inside. Then he was gone. Alone, Cassandra peeled off her uniform. The mirror showed her everything. Welts across her shoulders, some fresh and angry red, others scarred over in pale lines. A map of 8 years written in bruises and damaged skin. She cleaned the wounds with trembling hands, biting down on a towel to muffle her gasps. The antiseptic stung like fire. She had never told anyone. Who would believe her? Preston Mercer smiled at church on Sundays. He served on the city planning committee. He had lawyers. 3 floors below, Lucian sat in his study surrounded by monitors. Security cameras throughout the estate, installed after Elena's accident. He told himself they were for her protection, to track her movements in case she fell, to ensure the staff responded if she needed help. But tonight, something shifted in his chest. Something cold and sharp, like a blade wrapped in ice. He added 3 new cameras. One covering the hallway outside Cassandra's room. One watching the garden path she would walk to reach the main house. One monitoring the kitchen she would pass through. He typed notes into a secure file, Cassandra Morgan. Back injuries consistent with repeated trauma. 8 months employment, perfect attendance. Something happened tonight. Something that broke her. Carlo entered without knocking. In the Mafia, permission was a formality reserved for people outside the family. Why is the maid here? She was bleeding on a highway. So I brought her here. Lucian did not look away from the screens. She is staying until we understand what happened. Carlo knew better than to push. But he asked anyway. This about Elena. Lucian's jaw tightened. The cameras were supposed to protect his sister. He had installed them 2 years ago after she fell down the stairs and lay there for an hour before anyone found her. Never again, he had sworn. Never again would someone he cared about suffer while he stood helpless somewhere else. Never again would he be blind to tragedy happening in his own home. Now those same cameras would track Cassandra Morgan. Not because he trusted her. Because he recognized the look in her eyes, the desperation of someone with no options left. His brother had worn that same look 3 days before the betrayal that cost him his life. Morning broke thick and humid. Cassandra woke in unfamiliar luxury and panic seized her throat. Her phone showed 6:15 a.m. She was supposed to be at work at 6. She was already late. Someone had cleaned her uniform and left it folded outside her door. The bloodstains were gone. A simple dress, her size, lay beside it. Downstairs, Elena sat at the breakfast table, her fingers reading Braille on a tablet screen. She turned her head when Cassandra entered. You slept. I should not have. I have work. Lucian called the estate. You have the day off. Cassandra stood frozen. No one just gave her time off. Elena smiled gently. Sit. Have coffee. Tell me your name. They talked for an hour. Elena spoke of her foundation for disabled children, of the brother who would not let her live alone, of the cameras throughout the house that he pretended she did not know about. He thinks he failed me, Elena said quietly. The accident. Our parents. He thinks if he watches closely enough, nothing bad will happen again. Cassandra's throat tightened. That must feel suffocating. It feels like love. Obsessive, controlling, paranoid love. But love nonetheless. At 8 a.m., Lucian entered, straight from the poker room, awake all night. He saw Cassandra in uniform at his breakfast table and his expression hardened. You are bleeding through your shirt. She looked down. He was right. The welts had reopened. Elena's face showed concern. He showed something colder and more calculating. Franco. Get the car. The doctor's office was discreet, the kind of place used to treating men who bore the marks of their professions. Dr. Sarah Chen examined Cassandra's back in silence. When she finished, her face was professional ice. In the hallway, Lucian heard 8 years minimum. Repeated trauma. She needs antibiotics and she needs to tell authorities who did this. No authorities. Not yet. Back inside, Dr. Chen treated the wounds while asking gentle questions. Cassandra, exhausted and broken, told the truth for the first time in 8 years. Preston Mercer. Her landlord. It started small, reduced rent in exchange for cleaning his office. Then his apartment. Then the first time she said no, his belt found her shoulders, and he called it discipline. She never told because he threatened to evict her, to call social services, to take Noah away. And now he wanted $22,000 in 12 days or she lost everything. She repeated the number like it was a curse, $22,000. I have $2. 2. In the waiting room, Dr. Chen handed Lucian the file. He read without moving. Franco watched their boss's face change, a transformation they had witnessed only twice before, both times preceding someone's death. But this time it was different. Softer. More personal. Franco muttered to Carlo, "In 15 years, I have never seen him like this." During the drive back, Cassandra broke the silence. "Why would you help me? I am nobody. I clean your floors. You do not even know my name. Cassandra Morgan. 8 months at my estate. 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. The 19 bus. Never miss a day. You eat lunch alone in the garden. Noah, age 7. The drawing in your coat pocket." He paused. "I notice things other people miss. It is how I stay alive." Back at the estate, Lucian assigned her a permanent room in the family wing, near Elena. "You will stay here until the situation with Preston Mercer is resolved. I cannot pay you. I am not asking you to." He looked at her directly for the first time. "I want you to stop flinching when doors close. I want you to sleep without bleeding through your sheets. And I want you to trust that for the next 12 days, you are safe." That afternoon, Preston Mercer appeared at the main gate. He was sweating in the humid heat, his cheap suit straining, his expensive watch glinting in the sunlight. Carlo met him there, and the conversation was brief. "I need to speak to Cassandra Morgan. She is unavailable. I am her landlord. I have legal right. She owes me 11 days now," Carlo said. "And she will not be coming back." Preston's face reddened. He tried to push past. Carlo simply stood there, a mountain in a black suit, until Preston stepped backward. "Tell her the clock is ticking. I expect payment." Carlo smiled. It was not a nice smile. "So does my boss." That evening, at a charity gala Elena attended, Sophie Langford maneuvered close to her. 38. Old money, platinum jewelry, ice in her veins. She used Elena's foundation for social climbing. "Elena, darling, I heard Lucian is sheltering some homeless maid." "How charitable. Though I worry about the message it sends. These people can get confused when you show them kindness." Cassandra, attending because Elena insisted, overheard from across the room. She saw Sophie's eyes sweep over her discount dress, her bandaged shoulders. Sophie's laugh carried, "Well, everyone needs a project." That night, Cassandra sat in her new room and cried for the first time in years. Not from pain. From confusion. Noah's drawing lay on the nightstand, their family, drawn in crayon, whole and safe and impossible. Elena knocked gently, sat beside her, held her hand without speaking. In his study, Lucian watched the camera feeds. He saw Elena's kindness. He saw Franco bring Cassandra tea without being asked. He saw her fall asleep sitting up, Elena's hand still in hers. He picked up his phone and called Marcus Webb, an investigative journalist who owed him a favor. "I need everything on Preston Mercer. Property holdings, financials, legal complaints. Everything. And I need it quiet." In the humid darkness of San Francisco, cameras watched. Lawyers prepared documents. And somewhere in the city, Preston Mercer counted his money and smiled, believing the clock was ticking in his favor. He had no idea the clock had already run out. The morning light filtered through the penthouse windows, casting pale rectangles across mahogany floors. Cassandra sat in Elena's study, her hands trembling as she scrolled through news headlines on a tablet. The screen glowed with Preston Mercer's mugshot, shock frozen across his face, handcuffs visible at the edges of the frame. Below it, the words, "Federal Housing Fraud Charges. 40 years minimum. Sophie Langford's arrest photo appeared next. The platinum-haired woman who had whispered venom in hallways now stared at nothing, her expression hollow, her jewelry confiscated, her entire world dismantled between sunrise and breakfast. Cassandra did not move. She simply read the headlines again and again, each word landing like a stone dropped into still water. Elena found her there, coffee cup in one hand, her cane in the other. "You have been reading for 30 minutes, Elena said softly. "The same articles." "How is he real?" Cassandra whispered. "How is one person allowed to do this?" Elena sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Because he loves you. And because 8 years ago, he learned that mercy and survival rarely share the same breath." Cassandra turned to face her. Elena's eyes, those blind, gentle eyes, pointed toward the window, toward the city stretching below them, a city that had no idea how many lives had just changed. "I want to understand what happened," Cassandra said. "I want to know why." Elena's fingers found the coffee cup. "Come." "He is waiting in his study." The hallway stretched before them like a blade of silence. Footsteps, Cassandra's bare feet against cold marble, Elena's cane tapping a steady rhythm, the only sound in a house that suddenly felt too large, too full of weight that could not be seen. Lucian stood with his back to the door, hands braced against the window frame. 34 years old but looking decades older in that moment, his broad shoulders bent slightly forward, his Italian suit jacket discarded on a leather chair. Through the window behind him, San Francisco glittered in morning light. He did not turn around. 8 years ago, he began, his voice like thunder translated into human words, "I had a brother. Giulio. Younger than me by 4 years. Beautiful, reckless, desperate to prove himself." Lucian's hands flexed against the glass. "He made a choice I could not forgive. He sold information to the Torinos. Sold family secrets because he owed gambling debts he was too ashamed to ask for help with." Cassandra stood in the doorway, breathing shallow, understanding that she was hearing something almost no one in this world was allowed to hear. "I found out," Lucian continued. "I had 48 hours to choose. Mercy meant risking everyone who depended on me, the men, the families, the infrastructure of everything I had built. Survival meant eliminating the threat. Eliminating him." His voice did not crack. This was worse than cracking. This was a man stating facts about the worst decision he had ever made. "I chose survival." He turned then, and Cassandra saw his eyes, dark gray, usually impenetrable, now raw. 2 weeks later, I was in a meeting in Sacramento. Boring, stupid, meaningless. Elena was driving home from her university class. My parents were taking a shortcut through the Marina district. A construction truck lost its brakes on a hill and T-boned their car at the intersection of Jefferson and Buchanan at 3:53 in the afternoon. Elena made a small sound, not a sob, but acknowledgement. "My brother was supposed to be in the car," Lucian said. "He was supposed to pick up Elena that day, but he was running late from work. If I had not ordered his death, if I had shown mercy instead of strength, he would have been driving. He would have been crushed instead of Elena going blind." Lucian's hands dropped to his sides. "I failed them. My brother dead from my orders. My parents dead from a random truck. My sister blind, alone, terrified every morning for 8 years. And I could not save any of them." The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with the weight of 8 years of installing cameras throughout a mansion, 8 years of controlling every variable because controlling nothing had cost him everything. "The cameras," Cassandra said quietly. "In the hallways. In the kitchen. In the garden. The cameras were my penance," Lucian said. "My proof that I would never miss another warning sign. That I would see everything coming. That I would control everything, protect everything, because protecting nothing meant losing everything." He looked at her directly. "Then I found you bleeding on Highway 101, and I saw my brother in your eyes. Desperate. Out of options. About to be crushed by something much larger than yourself. And I thought, finally, Finally, I have a choice that matters. Cassandra felt her legs weaken. She sat down in a leather chair that cost more than she had earned in 5 years. You did this because of him. I did this because of you, Lucian corrected, moving closer, his movements deliberate and controlled. Because you matter. Because Preston Mercer believed you were nobody, and that belief nearly killed you. And because I am tired of choosing survival over mercy. For once in my life, I chose both. He knelt down, this man, the most dangerous power broker in San Francisco, the man who commanded loyalty with single glances, and knelt in front of her like he was soothing a lost child. Every camera in this house was designed to watch everything, he said. But what they really recorded was you learning to live again. That was what I watched. Every morning at 6 a.m., you appearing in the kitchen. Every afternoon in the garden, reading. Every evening with Elena, helping her navigate. I watched you stop flinching when doors closed. I watched you laugh at something Franco said about the pasta. I watched you exist without fear for the first time since you were 17 years old and Preston Mercer decided you were his to destroy. Cassandra's eyes filled with water, not from sadness, but from something harder to name. Relief. Recognition. The knowledge that someone had finally seen her. Preston Mercer is in federal custody, Lucian continued. 40 years minimum on housing fraud, extortion, and money laundering charges. Sophie Langford was arrested at 3 a.m. 20 years as an accomplice. By this afternoon, she will have been removed from every board she sits on. Every social contact will have blocked her number. Every charity she funded will reject her name. She will spend the rest of her life explaining why she took bribes to ignore the suffering of women and children. The journalist, Cassandra said. How did Marcus Webb get all that information? He called in a favor I had saved for something that mattered, Lucian said. The federal agents needed probable cause to move. I provided it. Now they have 16 months of investigation work completed in 72 hours. Preston's properties are being seized. His assets frozen. His entire operation dismantled because one man decided that his obsession with control could finally serve something besides his own survival. Elena spoke from somewhere near the window, her voice steady. My brother does not do things halfway. When he loves, he destroys everything that threatens the people he loves. It is both his greatest gift and his deepest wound. Lucian stood, extended his hand to Cassandra. There is one more thing you should know. Noah's mother, your mother, she no longer owes rent on her apartment. I purchased the building 2 hours ago. By tonight, all tenants will receive notification that their rent is frozen at current rates for the next 10 years. Preston's extortion machine stops here. Cassandra took his hand, calloused, warm, steady, and stood. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because you deserve to understand that you were not saved by a man trying to be a hero, Lucian said. You were freed by a man finally choosing the person you were over the power you could give him. There is a difference. One is about redemption. The other is about love. The morning light shifted. Shadows moved across the floor like time itself was trying to escape this moment of raw honesty. What happens now? Cassandra asked. Lucian's hand tightened around hers. His dark eyes held something dangerous and gentle at the same time, the same contradiction that had driven every choice he had made since finding her on Highway 101. Now, he said, you decide if you want to stay. Outside, the city continued its endless movement. Cars honked. Sirens wailed blocks away. The ordinary machinery of San Francisco grinding forward, indifferent to the fact that one mafia boss had just broken down and told the truth, that one woman had just learned she was worth saving, that everything was about to change in ways none of them could predict. The camera in the corner of the study captured it all, 2 people holding hands in morning light, a blind woman smiling, the moment when a predator's empire collapsed and a survivor finally believed she deserved to live in something other than fear. 3 months later, the rain had stopped. Cassandra Morgan sat at a wooden desk in a modest 1-bedroom apartment on Fillmore Street, 14 blocks from the estate, close enough to visit, far enough to breathe. The apartment was hers. Not borrowed, not rented under a man's name, not subject to anyone's whim. The lease was signed by her. The rent was paid from a settlement fund her lawyers had extracted from Preston Mercer's seized assets. Every penny of the $47,000 that had disappeared from tenants' accounts over 8 years was being returned. She was not the only one rebuilding. The desk held 3 things: a laptop, Noah's drawing of their family, and a coffee mug with Elena's handwriting on it, for the woman who taught me that surviving is not the same as living. Outside the window, San Francisco spread itself across the hills in winter light. Gray and golden at once. She opened the laptop and clicked into the business course interface. Financial management. She was taking it at night, working toward something that looked like a future. The instructor's voice filled the quiet apartment. Numbers, spreadsheets, the architecture of small enterprises. She took notes with a blue pen. Her handwriting was steadier now. The phone buzzed. A text from Franco, the older lieutenant with a silver scar along his jawline. Elena needs you at the foundation. A donor meeting. Can you come? She typed back, what time? The response came instantly, 4 p.m. We will send the car. She had stopped refusing the car. It was easier to accept help when help did not come with chains attached. Cassandra closed the laptop at 3 p.m. She changed into the navy dress she had bought herself 2 weeks ago, not from a thrift store, not from a donation bin, but from a real store where she handed over her own card. The fabric felt different when it belonged to you. She pulled her hair into a braid, the scar on her wrist catching the light as she moved. It had faded to white. Still visible. Still hers. The black SUV arrived at 3:13 exactly. Carlo drove. He was younger than Franco, with kind eyes and a nervous habit of adjusting his sleeve. He had never worked for Preston. He had only ever known Lucian's world. Elena is excited, he said as they pulled into traffic. 3 new donors committed significant funding. Cassandra smiled. That is good. The program needs more resources. Because of you, Carlo said. The presentation you gave last month changed minds. Sophie Langford's foundation was supposed to fund that initiative. But your work was better. Sophie Langford. The name still carried weight. The woman had appeared twice, once when Lucian's investigators exposed her connection to Preston's operation, and again at the federal courthouse when Sophie's assets were frozen and her social standing evaporated overnight. The wealthy do not disappear quietly. They shriek. Sophie had shrieked in 3 different news cycles before public attention moved elsewhere. Now her name was a footnote in articles about financial exploitation networks. Not a powerful woman. A cautionary tale. The foundation headquarters occupied a renovated warehouse in the Mission District. Elena had named it the House of Rising. Cassandra had helped design the programs: emergency housing for people like she used to be, financial literacy classes, trauma counseling, job training. It was staffed by people who had survived what residents were surviving. Cassandra managed the operations. She had a title now, Director of Program Development. She had a salary that allowed her to sleep past 5 a.m. Elena was waiting in the conference room, standing near the window with her cane, her blind eyes oriented toward the voice of the donor. She smiled when she sensed Cassandra enter. You came. Always, Cassandra said. The donors were 2 women and a man, wealthy, educated, the kind of people who had never experienced a choice between medicine and rent. But they had seen the videos. Preston's arrest had gone viral. The footage of him being led from his office in handcuffs, the news reports detailing his extraction scheme, the testimonies from 43 tenants he had exploited. And then Sophie's collapse, her arrest, her conviction on 3 counts of conspiracy. By the end of that week, 2 million people had watched Lucian's allies systematically dismantle the apparatus that had nearly destroyed Cassandra. The donors committed $340,000. For 1 year of operation. Elena squeezed Cassandra's hand under the table. We are going to help 50 more people this year, Elena whispered. 50 people who will not have to choose between survival and dignity. At 6 p.m., as the donors were leaving, Lucian arrived. He did not announce himself. He appeared in the doorway like something the building had materialized. Black suit, cashmere coat, a watch worth more than a used car. His dark eyes moved immediately to Elena, then held on Cassandra. The donors left satisfied, Elena told him. Cassandra presented the impact projections. They were convinced. I did not come for the donors, Lucian said. His voice was steady, weighted with something Elena could not see but Cassandra felt in her chest. I came to walk Cassandra home. The invitation hung in the air like a question. Carlo and Franco exchanged the kind of look that suggested this was unprecedented. In 6 months, Lucian had never just appeared to walk someone home. He did not do casual things. Casual things required the kind of vulnerability that men like him did not practice. The apartment is 14 blocks, Cassandra said quietly. You do not have to. I know I do not have to. I want to. He extended his hand. A gesture of asking, not commanding. She took it. The evening was cold. The kind of San Francisco cold that comes from the ocean, that cuts through fabric and settles in your bones. They walked without speaking for 3 blocks. His coat was long enough to shield her from the wind. She noticed him noticing that she was not shivering. That she was walking with her shoulders back. That something in her posture had changed. Tell me about the course, he said finally. The business course. He had known about it. Of course he had. He still monitored things. But she had stopped resenting it. Control could be a cage or it could be a prayer, the difference was intention. Financial management, she said. I am learning how to build sustainable systems. How to scale operations without compromising people. He nodded. You are thinking about expanding the foundation. Elena is thinking about it. I am learning if it is possible. It is, he said. I can teach you. They turned onto her block. The apartment building stood quiet, brick and fire escapes and the kind of neighborhood that had never known what Preston Mercer had done 2 miles away. She stopped at the entrance. Why are you here, Lucian? Because I wanted to know if you were safe. His eyes held hers. Storm gray in the sodium light. Because I wanted to hear you talk about something that belonged to you. Because I wanted to walk beside you and not feel like I was protecting you from something. Because I wanted to just be near you. He said it all at once, like a confession rehearsed 100 times in the shower and the car and the empty hours before dawn. I am not your redemption, Cassandra said. I am not the thing you saved so that you could forget about your brother. I know. His voice did not break. I go to his grave now and I tell him about you. I tell him that I am learning to let people breathe. I tell him that you are teaching me that protection does not require surveillance. And what does he say? Nothing. The dead do not speak. But I feel less alone when I tell him anyway. He shifted his weight. I will not rush this, Cassandra. I will not demand anything. But I want to know if you might, eventually, want me to be part of your life. Not as a protector. As a man who chooses to stay, because he wants to, because you choose to let him. Rain began falling. Not the drenching deluge from August, but soft, deliberate drops that landed on his coat and her hair and the sidewalk between them. I need time, she said. I have time, he replied. She climbed the stairs to her apartment. He did not follow. He stood on the sidewalk in the rain and watched her reach the door, watched her turn back once and nod, watched her disappear inside. Only then did he pull up his coat collar and walk back toward the waiting SUV. Carlo started the engine. How did it go? She said she needed time, Lucian said. That is the first true thing she has said to me since the night I found her on Highway 101. That is enough. Upstairs, Cassandra stood at her window and watched him leave. The rain fell harder now, washing the streets clean. She thought about the thing he said, that he felt less alone when he told his brother's grave about her. She thought about trust being a choice, repeated every day, never guaranteed to hold. She picked up her phone and texted Elena, "He came to walk me home. He asked if I might eventually want him in my life. As a man, not a protector." Elena's response came in seconds. "What did you say?" Cassandra typed, "That I need time." Elena, "Good. Real love does not rush. Real love waits." Outside, the city continued its endless work. Sirens in the distance. Engines on the street. The machinery of survival grinding forward. And in a small apartment on Fillmore Street, a woman who had once had $2 in her pocket sat at her desk, opened her business course, and continued building the future she had chosen. How did this story make you feel? Please leave a comment below and share what is in your heart. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. Share this with someone who needs to hear it.